what we're sharing about is when you have a child who has SM and the older child is taking over, let's say, who wants to parent, there's some good and bad there depending on, for me, the older child's personality. Because sometimes we can have an older one who's taking over, and maybe they're just doing too much. They're doing all the talking, right? My sister doesn't talk. She won't answer. I know the answer for her already and gives all of it. Because maybe that child is a really outgoing child already. They're very talkative. They have no challenges in communication. And the more that they can fill up the space for their sibling's not as uncomfortable. And so we might say intrinsically that child's being super helpful. They're being empathetic to their sibling. They want to help them. They don't want to see them, in stress. But the other part of that is they might be doing too much. And we definitely want to make sure that we're using them in the right capacity, the right role, which is helper, but don't overdo.
No, I think you're bringing up, great points. And for some of these caretakers, as we get some of these younger kids, and many of them have the social anxiety, the sensitivity, some have some separation issues, we will use these siblings in the treatment. They'll come in, they'll be either a verbal intermediary, they'll just be a helper in the session. Mm-hmm. And that makes our child patient with SM feel safe. And I'm thinking about so many cases where they just love it. I'm thinking back that I've been doing this for so many years that we have one coming to our upcoming camp that is a sibling of a child I treated, and she would come in session. And she would do her bridge when my patient did her bridge. And she learned the bridge and she learned feelings. And sometimes she'd interrupt me and say, well, how do you feel about that? And it's like, whoa, she's going to be a treatment provider. Yeah. And needless to say, the mom reached out. I've been in touch with this mom ongoing over the years because a lot of families always keep in touch with us. It's like, hey, my daughter Sarah would love to be part of the camp and help out. I'm like, absolutely. And there's been a number of families like that. And it's not always just girls.
Sure.
I have another family right now where the child is about 5. Her brother's like 8. He comes in session. He brings some of her stuff from home. She is comfortable with him. I've worked with parents to kind of make sure he has his own needs, just like these other kids. Like, we have to see, how much are they giving of themselves? Is it just in session? Is it part of the process, or are they losing themselves in this? So as much as we love the caretakers and the ones that are the protectors and the helpers, it's also about making sure their own needs are met as an individual and not just the caretaker or the another mother or father figure to the child with SM, because we don't want all that. We don't want them to lose their uniqueness we want them to have their own identity. And so for some of these families, we've had to say, hey, look, it's wonderful that Jared is just so helpful. And he's like super brother, right? And he feels so proud and so good. And he's helping her play her games and color it in and make the bridge and point things out. But what about his uniqueness? Well, maybe that's part of his uniqueness. That's part of who he is. He loves to help. The teachers say the same thing. In school, he's the helper. He loves to help other kids with assignments. That's fine. But I just want to make sure that there isn't a compromise on their needs. What are you thinking? Because I see you have a look on your face. Not that our listeners can see that, but I can see it.
But I agree, because the same thing that you see of this child, which is, it is a unique gifting. If you're that empathetic, caring person, you want to help, we want to utilize that. To tell a sibling, no help from you, that's hurtful, because they really want to be there for their sibling. So in session, I often will say to parents, and this does, not that we're talking about school, but it does parallel over to school, because some of these very same kids are the helpers in class, like you said. But these are the same children who oftentimes to our SM child are the classmates that are overdoing, answering for, and teachers may come back and say, the kids just treat this child like a doll or a baby, right? So we can see those parallels at home and in the real world. So one of the things I usually do in session is I'll say, we want to utilize them. So what are some key ways we can, and why not bring them into session and teach them some of the strategies? Yeah. If they're already sort of in this role, this dynamic that they're doing some of the same things parents are doing, what are we doing in our sessions? We're educating parents on the best way to create opportunities for the child, not to speak for them all the time, not to do for them. So we can teach our kids age appropriately a couple of things they can do. So for instance, if I have a client who's coming in with their sibling, that sibling is always doing all the answering and everything in session, I might say things like, I might guide it and say, well, give me your answer first, And now let's check in on your sister's answer. And they might say, but I know her favorite color is pink. And I might pause and say, maybe she's a different color today. Let's ask. And I might say, what do you think is your favorite color? Pink or is it purple today? Tell Max. So I'm modeling those strategies of how to be a verbal intermediary and pausing, checking in instead of answering for. And those are strategies that we can teach our families as a whole.
And sometimes when we think about the bridge and the stages, I love that you're modeling. And sometimes one of the things that happens is when their sibling is there, they feel more comfortable, their anxiety goes down. And when you say, what is your favorite color today? They may just answer.
Sure.
So we never want to jump in, as we always say. So sometimes you have to tell the child, the sibling there, hey, give your sister or brother a chance.
Yeah. Because
they are so used to jumping in. And one of the things we train parents and teachers is give them 5 to 10 seconds to respond. If they don't, re-ask it as a choice, Sometimes we ask as a choice first because we know that we're hopefully going to get the answer quicker. But as we're moving to more open-ended, thought-provoking questions, they may have a more challenging time responding, especially those that may have one of the whys of difficulty processing and it takes them longer because there's a lot of kids we ask questions to. And what I've seen this in session with siblings is when I tell the older sibling or even the younger sibling, because we're going to get into that, I have some questions from listeners, like a question, the older sibling jumps in and I say, hey, let's just wait. Look at, you see they have either a smart device or a watch. I'll go, look at your watch and just or count to yourself quietly 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many times when we give that wait time, the kids answer. But they're so used to their sibling answering. And how often do we ask a question? And I'm sure this happens with parents where they're trying to involve, because we teach the SM triangle, right, of how to involve the child in the social communication situation by bringing them in and not answering for them or telling them what to say right away if they're not there. But we ask them to kind of wait it out and they just kind of answer without even having to do a verbal intermediary.
Yeah. And you said something really great, which is
Thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
I can't wait to hear what it was.
You often will say, give it a 3 to 5 second wait time before a parent jumps in. But we have to teach our siblings or classmates, whoever that may be, friends, to do the same. And our adults sometimes can do that wait time, and sometimes our younger ones don't always count to 5. But we can be direct and give some language with that. I like to use the power of the pause. So I will bring that language up of let's take a pause. And so we'll create a pause and count, or I'll say, let's take a beat. And so finding some quick language to remind your sibling when they are ready to do that, and you can sense that your child wants to jump in for their SM sibling, is to have some quick language that represents that time period that will help them just pause.
Let's take a pause, and maybe let's take a pause 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I sometimes say 5 to 10 is because it turns out it's quicker.
Sure.
And also I teach parents, teach teachers, I teach siblings older, especially if they're older, to kind of not stare the kid down, because the more that we stare their sibling, the child with SM down, the more expectation they feel, the more anxiety they feel, the longer it takes.
Sure.
So often with us, we might be writing something or coloring something as we're asking questions or turning, you see what I mean? So it's all these little subtle things that we're actually teaching the sibling what to do and how to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.